what we've got, but I did figure out how to get to the analytics page. So we shall see.
I think we're live. So
All right. Well, let's just assume we are here, and I will double check because now I figured out how to see that screen as well. Let's see. See, just when I get cocky, that's when it all goes to hell. There we are. All right. There, it's Saturday. Come on. I'm not even supposed to be here today. No, that's not true. Of course I'm supposed to be here. It's your old pal Emac coming to you on a Saturday mid-morning with one Adam, Ship My Money Share, and we've got an intriguing 7-game slate. So we're going to go over this. We're going to go game by game. We're going to spend a little more time with each area. We have, of course, more news now that we are sitting here with the injury information that we have after last night's games and a few other stuff. We will have to look for additional updates. A reminder, the games start at 7:30 tonight. So that will be a little bit different than normal. And they go off 1 at 7:30, 3 at 8 o'clock, and 3 at 8:30. So we're going to have a nice condensed evening for those of you that are not planning on staying up late, which of course is most definitely not Adam, because Adam always stays up late. Adam, talk to me. I got to watch my alma mater last night. I went to bed at halftime. Of course, I'm rooting for the University of Washington. I got up at 7 this morning and watched the rest of the game. That's something you never have to worry about, do you?
No, because I don't think I watched a single football game in college when I was there, and I sure as hell haven't watched one since.
Yes. Well, I meant the staying up late part, taping a show so you can watch it in the morning.
Yeah, no, don't have that problem either.
All right, let's run through a couple quick injuries here at the high level. We know that a lot of questionables. So starting off the things we do know that Steph Curry is probably going to be out for another 2 games tonight and potentially one more. They'll give us more of an update. We saw that he was in a little bit of a fender bender yesterday, but seems to be okay. We know that Pau Gasol, now here's the interesting thing, he keeps popping up as doubtful on the injury reports, but there's no timetable for his return. So he's been dealing with a sore foot. He last played on November 4th. He's missed 9 games. We expect it to be 10 tonight. Chandler Hutchinson was out last night for Chicago. He's listed as questionable. He has a sore back. Dwight Howard was out last night for the Washington Wizards. He still has that glute issue. He's missed, I want to say, 3 games now, or he only played a couple minutes in the one where he went out. We've got Gary Harris is dealing with a potential Achilles injury. They're not sure if it's Achilles or ankle, what it is, but he says he's going to be a go. We haven't had their shoot-around news yet. Let's see, Al Horford. Who the hell is George Horford? George Thorogood and the Destroyers, but yeah, well before your time, Adam. So we've got Al Horford was out on Friday. We don't know if he's going to be here tonight or not. Wesley Matthews has missed the last 3 games with the hamstring injury. He's listed as questionable. And then Draymond Green, there's a big cue by him. He's been out for 4 games with his knee injury. We don't know what's up with him. And then Alfonso McKinney is questionable. He's missed the last 4 or 5 games himself. Jordan Bell got a vote of confidence last night from Coach Steve Kerr, said he's earned himself some more minutes. So that, of course, mucks everything up there with Jerebko and Looney, etc. I feel like I might be missing one, Adam. I'm setting you up for this. Who got hurt, had to leave in the 3rd quarter, but came back for the last 3 minutes of the game in Madison Square Garden, where his team lost to the Knicks?
I think you're talking about Anthony Davis there.
Anthony Davis, questionable. So he's going against the Wizards. That game has a massive over-under, so we're going to definitely want to talk about different contingencies with what we want to do, because both these teams are going to play very, very fast, and if Davis is out, there's some definite moves we want to make with regards to both teams, and if he's in, there'll also be some corresponding moves. But Adam, I've been yammering away here for a little bit. Let's start off with Houston and Cleveland. We've got Houston favored by double digits at home. This is a 3-4 For Houston, this is going to be a 3-4 for most of the teams. The only two teams that did not play last night that are on the slate are Sacramento and Dallas. Let's see if there's any injury news. George Hill was the only injury news I had here for Cleveland, and we know that, yeah, that's pretty much it. Talk to me here about Houston and Cleveland.
Yeah, so I mean, James Harden usage has been up lately, which is really good. It's been nice to see that he's coming closer to the ceiling that we expect from him, even with Chris Paul healthy. Since the Carmelo Anthony trade, usage rate up around 39-40%. So, that's been really good to see. Obviously, a good matchup for him. I do like Chris Paul more today than I normally have, just because the slate is smaller and we don't have that really deep point guard position that we've had lately. So $7,700 on DraftKings, Chris Paul stands out as just a nice combination of floor and ceiling. And then, Eric Gordon obviously has been awful, but still playing minutes and eventually will have a good game. So a decent tournament option. Just a nice combination of floor. But the one guy that I think really stands out has to be Clint Capella here, coming off 3 consecutive monster games and now getting a favorable matchup against a poor Cleveland defense. Still very reasonably priced, playing around 36 minutes a night. There's really just nothing to dislike about Capella. We've also seen an increase in his usage and his rebounding percentage since Carmelo Anthony left the team. So that's been, good and made it more productive as well. I think he just stands out as one of the best, mid-range centers on the slate.
All right, as we look to kind of core type plays, are you going to consider Capella one of your cores here?
I haven't made lineups yet, so kind of tough to say right now, but I certainly wouldn't be opposed to it.
All right, I just asked. He was one of the guys. Now I like to play over there on the Draft app. We gotta get a promo code so people can get a little something. But I was able to pick up Capella in the last round of 2 of my 3 8-mans that I did, and that was awesome. I won one of them mostly thanks to the strength of him, and I just missed cashing in the other one because Donovan Mitchell went out after having a good 13 or 14 minutes and dinged himself up. Otherwise, Adam, it would have been a glorious night, but. 3 in a row, 50-plus fantasy points. The twin 2020 game, both he and Andre Drummond just absolutely crushed it last night. Looking at some of the backcourt players, now here's a guy that I know you and Lofty have talked about a ton, and we've landed on both sides. That would be Sexton, who is the point guard there for Cleveland. Now, he is... I don't know. So I've read some interesting articles about him. I've actually watched him. He is getting the minutes. He's taking more shots, but it's interesting to see him. One of the things they talk about is in the pick and roll. Almost a third of the time when he goes into the pick and roll, he doesn't pick or roll, and he actually goes the wrong way and takes the ball into the defense that is completely supposed to be shielded off by the whole pick and roll maneuver. That doesn't seem like a good thing to do if you're in the NBA.
Yeah, still just kind of a raw player, and that's really the issue with him from a fantasy perspective. Is the minutes are there, the opportunity's there, but on a game-to-game basis, he's just going to be inconsistent because he's a rookie, he's not that polished, and he's still making mistakes. But the price tag factors that in, so no aversion to Colin Sexton if he ends up in lineups.
All right, you're getting some kudos here. Shout out for the Rudy Gay call. They really like that. Jack Perry says he took second in the $5 single entry last night. He wants to give a shout out to Ship My Modem DSL. I think that's referring to you. Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's awesome. Glad to hear that.
Yep. And let's see a couple others. Oh, a nice reference to Harold and Maude. Yeah, platonically maybe, but not Harold and Maude. That was just a movie. That movie should have been like a horror movie. Very disturbing, actually.
I have no idea
what we're talking about. This came out. Oh my God, I think like late 70s or early 80s. It was one of those random movies that was very critically acclaimed. It was one of those think pieces, and it was on Showtime, I think. And we had Showtime. So, Adam, Showtime used to be a box that sat on top of your TV with a button on it. And you would turn your dial to channel 3, and you would push the button, and you would then get Showtime. HBO also had its own box. So if you had both, one, you were very rich, apparently, because where I grew up, nobody had both. But they would stack them on top of each other. And they're just a mess. So, anyway there. Anything else here that you like from Cleveland at all? Because I have a couple questions for you on Houston.
Yeah, Chetty should just keep playing huge minutes here. I'm pulling up Popcorn Machine now from... Oh, it's not loaded on Popcorn Machine, so no, I'm not. But assuming that Larry Nance still played essentially just backup center minutes last night. I'm pulling it up on a different site now to double check that. But it opens the door for Chetty to just play like as many minutes as he can handle. We did get some time at the 4 last night for Larry Nance, but still not a lot. Most of his minutes were backing up Tristan Thompson. He got a handful at the 4. We obviously got huge playing time from Chetty. So he started at the 3, but also played some time at the 4 when Nwaba wasn't in. Just a boatload of minutes available for Chetty. He's not all that productive when he's on the floor consistently on a per minute basis, but when you're talking about someone that's still less than $5,000 and is playing, as many minutes as he is, it still makes him a quality value option.
All right, moving over here to the Houston side. Let's target the mid range first. We'll get to Harden, we'll get to Paul. We already hit on Capella, but Eric Gordon is someone that we're waiting on him to come back to normal. I mean, he's shooting 32% from the field this year, Adam. Putting that in perspective, he's a 43% career shooter coming into this season. He's never had a season basically below 40%, and obviously usually hits within those career norms. Now, he's someone that has started really increasing his three-point attempts. He's averaged just shy of 9 the last 2 years. This year, he's averaging a little more than 8. So that may be bringing down some of his overarching career field goal percentage numbers. But this year, he's hitting just 24%. He's hit 37% of three-pointers from his career. Do you think he's harboring some sort of injury issue? Did Brian Anderson leave him the color blindness issues there in Houston? What do you think is the deal with Eric Gordon? Because here is a guy that we know, even with the big 3 healthy on Houston, he can come in and still get his, and he's just getting to be it's a ridiculous price point right now.
Right. I mean, he's always banged up, so it wouldn't be surprising if he's dealing with something. But without that news, I would rather just go under the assumption that, we're 17, 18 games into the season and he's just not been shooting well. And it's something that'll most likely turn around and he'll get back to his career norms, which means that at least in tournaments, like obviously you can't count on the guy on a night-to-night basis because he doesn't contribute a lot of peripherals. As long as Paul and Harden are healthy, you're not getting a bunch of, Eric Gordon running point guard and distributing the ball. You're just getting him as a shooter. But the upside is still there in tournaments for him to have ceiling games because he's still getting his shots. You have, in his last 4 games, field goal attempts of 13, 13, 6, and 14. 3-point attempts of 9, 11, 4, and 6. He's just shooting, terribly, like you said. But the minutes are still there. The field goal attempts are still there. And on nights where he's actually making his shots, you would expect him to get a couple of more looks as well. So there's certainly upside at his price point. Just not someone that, I want to count on in cash games because the floor is still so low.
Yeah, the other thing that's going on is Houston has been playing a pretty tight rotation. MCW, Michael Carter-Williams, that's just a mess that he's even on their team. Obviously, Brandon Knight never going to be healthy again in his career. Marquise Chris, shout out to the University of Washington, but he's a mess. He's not getting playing time, and he is healthy. When he does get on the court, he fouls like a madman. Nene, perpetually dinged up and old at this point. So they're really running like a 3.25 man bench, do we want to say? Because it's Gordon, it's Gerald Green. When he's healthy, Gary Clark, who is on a 2-way contract, and then it's what's the other kid's name? Isaiah Hartenstein is getting a couple minutes here and there. I mean, obviously Melo's out of town, etc. Their bench is just it's absolutely depleted. They had an overtime game last night in which the starters outside of James Ennis, who, by the way, woohoo, James Ennis, that's really a guy you want playing a prominent role on your team. But everybody else played 37 or more. That was Chris Paul. Harden played 41. Capella played 43. And then PJ Tucker never slows down, never gets tired, never gets old. 44 minutes from PJ. Is there going to be some rubbery legs is where I'm going the long way around with this one. And maybe that 10-point, being 10-point road favorites, going to take them a while to get there. This game may stay a little closer than we think in the first 3 quarters.
Yeah, I mean, entirely possible. Whenever you have teams, on road back-to-backs or 3 and 4s, that's always a concern. It's not something that I really factor in for DFS all that much because it's just very, very noisy. And while I'm not going to deny that it has an impact, good luck figuring out where it does and where it doesn't. But, certainly I'm not concerned about I'm not factoring in like blowout risk here and being overly concerned about them coming in and running Cleveland off the floor.
Yeah, and that's one where I just additional context, because good God, we seemingly can predict blowouts about as well as we can predict overtime. So when you look at point spreads, when you look at situations, these are what would happen if this series or this game or this matchup was played 1,000 times. This is probably what would happen. But in one night, in one afternoon, in one day, whatever it is, we can get a lot of differences there. Amongst these Rands, because we're looking here at a 7-game slate, there will be some value, I'm sure, from some other teams. But mopping this up, anybody outside of Flyer on Gordon, I don't hate PJ Tucker. And then the main 3 guys are reasonable in this. Anything else from this game, Houston, or that we missed going by on Cleveland?
No, the only thing that I would want to add is, just because I just pulled it up, but Harden once again last night, 38.8% usage rate. Obviously didn't have a monster fantasy game, but once again, we just saw him go out there and get up a ton of shots, do everything on the floor. So still really good to see from him. And it does make me more interested, because for a while I was kind of just writing him off because he just wasn't getting the shots up that other guys in his price range are. But, now he finally is. So that's certainly good to see going forward.
All right. Shout out there to B Rabbit in the premium Slack chat. He says, thanks for another great show. You guys are going to take me from 6 to midnight. Love it. He must be working hard. We've got in the regular chat, they're asking about my chair. I did get a gaming chair yesterday, Adam. The base is put together, the back is put together, but the instructions are a little unclear on how it's supposed to fit together. So we've tried a combination. I said, no, that mechanically that can't work. So I tried to watch a few videos this morning. Everybody skips this particular portion of how to put the chair together. So Adam, I know I'm not the only one, but I think I do have it figured out. So you guys will get to see that chair make its debut the next time I am on air here. Okay, moving along. Oh, that reminds me. I got that on sale. That was a Black Friday sale. If you want to get a Black Friday Cyber Monday little action here at Osmo.com, you can use the promo code CYBERMONTH, and that will give you 1 month at half price. Or if you like, love, and know you want to stick around with us for a long time, because, hey, we got the information from the #1 DFS gamer in the world and a host of very talented contributors here. A lot of good stuff behind the paywall. You can get a 1-year subscription for a 10-month price. That's $120 savings. That is promo code CYBERYEAR. Get it? Cyber Month, Cyber Year. I didn't get it when I first saw it because I didn't know there was a Cyber Year. But we have smart codes there, and that'll let you know which one you use at checkout to get these discounts. Adam, we're going to move on to our first of our 8 o'clock games. You know what? Let's just go straight to New Orleans and Washington. So the dealio with, oh, good God. Did I just quote Pink? I think I did. Adam, I'm off the rails. I've had like 5 sodas this morning. So I swore off them for a while. I need them, Adam. I need them.
Yeah, I don't drink much soda, but coffee, I can't quit coffee.
I don't drink coffee, so there we go. I like iced coffee. My wife makes a very nice cold brew. I just don't like hot drinks. But back to this. Anthony Davis, so he has, depending on what you think, a quad or a hip injury. He fell. He left in the third quarter, came back for the last few minutes of the fourth quarter in a loss there for the Pellies in Madison Square Garden. Very sad. We never know for sure how hurt he is. Now, is it frustrating? Yes, but good God, this guy is, and I'm saying this in a loving way, he's a freak of nature. I mean, not only is he the brow for an intriguing reason, if you've ever seen his feet, his toes literally, let me get on camera, his toes kind of look like this.
Why have you seen Anthony Davis's feet?
Yeah, that's his feet.
Why have you seen his feet?
Because someone, well, there's these sites, Adam. They're called fetish sites. No, because someone put up a shot of what his feet look like, what his teeth look like. It's like the guy he was all growing at different rates or something. And it's a mess. So I said after I saw that, I'm not going to get too bent out of shape when he gets hurt or whatever, because clearly he's just a gangly dude. But what are we going to do with this? Best game of the night. The Wizards are playing incredibly fast. The Pelicans are playing incredibly fast. The Wizards just said, defense, we don't need no stinking defense. This is a beautiful game, Adam. And I wanted to load it up. I wanted Wall on one side. I wanted Davis on the other. And then I was trying to figure out, is Jeff Green going to be the guy I want? Because Markieff Morris, you never know where his head's at. On the other side, I wanted it to be super fast. Maybe we go with the Julius Randle. So let's analyze this first. Let's say Davis plays, no minutes limitations, no other issues. He's playing, good God, like 40 minutes a game.
Yeah, so I mean, the Pelican side is the easy one to break down here because Washington obviously is they play fast. They don't play much defense at all. And we, at this point, know how the Pelicans rotation is going to work. You're going to get 38 to 40 minutes from Anthony Davis, assuming he's good to go. You're going to get 38 to 40 minutes from Drew Holiday, assuming he's not in foul trouble or something stupid like that. And Holiday, obviously much more productive without Elfrid Payton on the floor, has about a 26% usage rate, almost a 40% assist percentage alongside Davis and Mirotic without Peyton, Cousins, Rondo since the start of last season. So just a very, very, very productive spot for those two. Obviously the two favorites, Etuan Moore playing huge minutes. The price tags come up. There's not a ton of excess value there in terms of median projection, but he does still have a ceiling in this matchup. Julius Randle's more expensive than I would like to pay, ideally for 26 to 28 minutes. It is a good spot. He's just a little more expensive than I would like. But guys like Holiday and Davis, obviously in phenomenal spots against Washington, and they're guys that I fully plan on prioritizing on this slate. On the other side, it's a bit tougher, though, because you have a Washington rotation that is basically just a mess, especially in the front court. You know the minutes that you're going to get from Wall. You know the minutes you're going to get from Beal. Porter's minutes have been inconsistent this season. Now you have Markieff Morris coming off the bench, and you have Thomas Satoransky being given more minutes, mostly at the 3, in addition to playing backup points. So it kind of just it makes the minutes more unpredictable for guys like Oubre and Jeff Green, and Morris. One thing that stood out from last night, though, and that I'm really happy to see, and I hope it continues, is that Markieff Morris essentially was the backup center. Which was the case in the previous game, but he didn't play as many minutes. Here, though, when Thomas Bryant was not on the floor, Markieff Morris was. And that bodes really well for him. I think that assuming Dwight's out, the most logical role is that Bryant continues to play, a stint to open each half and, maybe a few minutes towards the end of the first half. But that outside of that, the Wizards go small because that's what their team is built for. And Scott Brooks just hasn't been doing it for whatever reason this season. But if you're going to get Markieff Morris playing a ton of minutes at the 5 and playing a lot of those minutes with the second unit where, you don't have Wall out there or you don't have Beal out there, it gives him more field goal opportunities, but it also makes him a more productive player. He's always been more productive when he's playing the 5 and not the 4. So I do have interest in Keefe. It's just that there is still risk there because, for one, you're talking about Keefe, who tends to get in foul trouble or get ejected from games or whatever. But also it's just a rotation that I still expect to be volatile. If Keefe's not playing well, they can go to Jeff Green for those minutes. They can give Thomas Bryant more minutes. There's still things that Scott Brooks can do, and he's just been so far from consistent that it's tough for me to trust guys. But I am optimistic on Markieff Morris after seeing the rotation they ran last night.
All right, I'm going to give you a little secret and I literally just came up with it. By the way, I dropped a link of the Anthony Davis body parts in premium chat. Adam, you can see.
What the hell?
Yes, okay? Those are real. That's poor guy. I think he's, like I said, he grew it. Different body parts were growing at different rates.
Those are LeBron James's. That's LeBron James' foot.
Wait, but they said that was
No, it's Anthony Davis's teeth.
Oh. Well, okay. Well, good God, how the hell does LeBron play? LeBron literally now sorry, Jordan. Now LeBron, greatest of all time if he's playing on those wheels. Good God. All right. Never realized. I just assumed it was both the same. I guess you should reading comprehension, EMAC, catch it. Here's my thoughts on Markieff Morris. Now, this is a legitimate thing. We're already a little off the rails, so let's have one conspiracy theory, which actually, Adam, once I'm done explaining it, you're going to think it actually has merit. And we're going to go back and look at this. He was on the road last night. What was he going to do after the game? He wasn't going to go out. He had to get on a plane and come back down to Washington. Therefore, he did not need to go shower and get ready to go out to the club early. So he stayed in the game. He wasn't going to do anything else. He didn't want to sit on the bench. Might as well get some stats. Tonight, back home, he's probably going to go do something because the Woods don't play for a couple days. tonight's the night maybe we should be worried about him. So I think we should go back and look at some of his games, see what his minutes are when we know that they are traveling on one end of a two-gamer, and see how he does that first game.
All right, well,
I'm legitimately serious about this one.
Okay, well, when you're done doing that, let me know what you find.
Okay. By we, I guess you meant me. So yes.
Yeah, I said you.
The brilliant person that came up with this will look at that. So anyway, we're going to take a look at that. Anybody who's enterprising and knows how to download the raw game log files, etc., can use Access. Go for it, because I'm going to chug this thing out in Excel, so it could take me a little while. But that's all right. That's all right. Okay, back to this, though. I really appreciated Thomas Bryant taking a three-pointer there at the end of the game. Good God, I watched the last part of this game just to see, because the bench for a moment, it looked like they were going to bring him back. They had, just everybody was gunning threes. They had one possession where they took 4 three-pointers, because each time they got the ball back, threw it out to somebody, and a different guy took a three-pointer. Adam, the Wizards are a mess. They're an absolute mess.
Yeah, I think I saw a tweet last night that every single player who got in the game for Washington missed multiple three-pointers last night.
I am looking at the box score, and that is correct. I think it's easier to say that everybody on the Wizards, 2 of them made more than one. Ouch. Everybody else made one or didn't make a shot. Adam, that's a mess. They were 9 for 46. That's 19.6%. That is not good at all. Austin Rivers was the one guy that I saw splash one, which, yay, Austin Rivers, of all things. I thought Jeff Green looked really good, and then I went and looked at the box score and realized I must have seen the only 3-play sequence where he actually looked good last night, because it was like, wow, you guys just don't seem to care. And that's why I had to go look into Markieff, because I thought, wow, he actually had a decent stat line. What was the difference in all of this? What is the other variable we can find? So looking at this, anything else that you want to mention about the mess that is the Wizards? If Davis doesn't play, is there a particular strategy you'd like to go with? Or do you think the Wizards will still kind of do the same thing anyway?
Yeah, I mean, if Davis doesn't play, then I don't think it affects the Wizards. You know, obviously you get more Julius Randle, you get more Nikola Mirotic, but I expect the Wizards to be able to go as small as they want to here. I mean, you basically have Julius Randle playing backup 5 minutes. So I don't think that we should, be concerned about them having to keep, a big out there. Obviously, Dwight's still questionable. So if he plays, you can't feel as confident in anything about Markieff Morris or the front court in general. Howard would be a very risky play because we have no idea how he's feeling, but it would be worth keeping in mind that every game he's played this season, once he came back from injury the first time, he was fully good to go. They haven't run any, half-assed, Dwight Howard for 22-minute, outside of games where like the game went small, he only played 22 minutes, but he hasn't, when he's played this year, he's never been on a minutes restriction.
All right, looking at the Pellies, the only person that has any injury designation whatsoever is, of course, Anthony Davis, and we've hammered that one to death. According to chat, they'd like us to move on. Apparently, they didn't see your guys' show on Friday. Did you guys hit the 2.5 hour mark?
No, we were done in 2:15 for like 12 games.
2:15. There you go. Well, we're going to be done in significantly less than 2:15. But there you go. That's that. Well done. I managed to go and take a nap, and you guys were still going when I woke up. So. Shout out to you guys. Back here, though, Drew Holiday, I think, is a phenomenal play in all formats. I'm okay with the price point because I think the speed is of the game is really going to accentuate what he's doing, whether Davis is in or out. Mirotic, I'm on the fence. If Davis is out, I'm intrigued by Mirotic. If Davis is in, not so much on Mirotic. I'm okay with Julius Randle either way, because I think this is a game that sets up a little better for him. Of course, Davis being out would be the preferred outcome to go with Randle, because he is sitting at 7,300 there on DraftKings. But I think any type of matchup, he has double-double upside, and we see him flirt with triple-doubles from time to time. He plays better in the high-paced games. This is definitely going to be one of them. Amongst the secondary cast of characters there, Holiday, Mirotic, and Randle, how are you approaching those guys today, Adam?
Holiday's my favorite. I don't have a ton of interest in Mirotic, and I have even less interest in Randle.
Look at that. Didn't even mention feet once, Chad. There you go. That was how quick we can get through this. Looking down the list here, little bit of an afterthought. Eton Moore's price is getting up, very, very scoring dependent, but he's getting off a ton of shots. We know that the Wizards they haven't been the best against anything this year, but they're not always great against wing players and backcourt players that can shoot the ball because they don't ever switch on defense, which is a problem because by the time that third or fourth pass comes around, somebody's got an open shot. Yes, it's frustrating to be a Wizards fan. So Eton Moore is okay. Everybody else is, I think, dangerous even on the short slate. Would you go with any of these super cheap guys if Davis were to be out, like Miller or Clark? Do you think trickle-down effect for minutes would help anybody below Eton Moore?
Probably not. I mean, it's you would probably get some Check Diallo minutes, but probably not enough that I would want to roster him. You would get just more minutes for Randall, more minutes for Mirotic. You would get more usage for guys for those guys, but also for Drew and for Moore. And the guys that maybe get a few extra minutes like Miller and Johnson, they're just such unproductive players that I wouldn't be that interested in them.
Let's continue on here. We'll move to Denver and Oklahoma City. We do know that Russell Westbrook is back. He and his wife brought in twins to the world, and he was dealing with an ankle injury, but he looks to be a full go at this point, and I'm just checking to see what, if any, news we have for him. Nope, he is clear on that. Looking at this game, we've got a 216 over-under. We have the Oklahoma City Thunder favored by 5 at home. Again, back-to-back for both of these teams. Denver is playing at the 5th lowest pace at the moment, and Oklahoma City is playing at the 8th fastest pace. Generally, the home team has a little bit easier chance of dictating things, so maybe they'll pull Denver into a little bit of a faster pace. Let's start off here with Jokic. I don't want to take him against Steven Adams. I don't want to take him because he's also not getting a lot of shots, but we've seen him be such an amazing facilitator. We've seen him, obviously the rebounding is there. It's just the scoring that's a mess. We know he has the blow-up game and potential in him, Adam, but I don't think I want to go there, even at the 8,800 price, which is dipped below 9,000 at this point. Talk to me about your thoughts on Jokic.
My biggest concern with Jokic here is that this is the first back-to-back set that Denver has played since the end of October, beginning of November. I think it was either October 31st or 30th and 31st or October 31st and November 1st. But whatever it was, we saw in the first game, it went to overtime and Jokic only played about 32 or 33 minutes. So he played 27 or 28 minutes in regulation. Then on the second half of the back-to-back, the game blew out. So his minutes were down anyway. But either in between those games or after the second game, one of the two, Mike Malone came out and stated that he was going to adjust his rotation for back-to-backs and play some of his starters fewer minutes during the back-to-backs than he does in island games. And that then we obviously had a month where they didn't have a back-to-back. So I was really curious to see what would happen last night as far as minutes go. Obviously, that game blew out, so you can't just look at the minutes total. But if you just look at Jokic's first half rotation last night, he played 14 minutes. And obviously, if you double that, if you get the same rotation in the second half, you're only at 28 minutes. Even if you give him a few extra minutes in the fourth quarter, you're getting to 30 to 32 minutes. And that's just not what you want from Nikola Jokic. If you're going to pay for him, you want 34 to 36 minutes. So on top of it being a difficult matchup here, I think that there is legitimate concern that we could see him in line more for a 30 to 32 minute game than 34 to 36. Obviously, he can still produce big numbers in that time, but it's just not an optimal spot. So I am really hesitant to go to him on back-to-backs until we start to see that, what Malone said he was going to do isn't happening anymore. So that's actually my biggest concern with Jokic, even more than the, relatively difficult matchup with Adams.
All right. Overall, do you think the Gary Harris, if he's out, do you think that Denver's going to suffer a ton? Of course, they're already missing or have been playing without Will Barton for several weeks. We had a Trey Lyles sighting finally last night. Of course, he just sunk damn near every shot that he took. He had been incredibly disappointing for a little while, but it seems like the depth here and just not a lot of spectacular guys, everybody's sort of subsided once again. If Harris is out, is that going to elevate anybody? Are we going to get a nice game potentially from Murray? Are we going to see anybody else on the wings step up?
If Harris is out, I think you should see more usage from Murray. I don't think it would affect his minutes. You're already getting 36 to 38 minutes from Jamal Murray in competitive games. I think that it would solidify Monte Morris's minutes. We're seeing him basically play like 24 to 28 minutes, but essentially he's the backup for Murray and the backup for Harris. So it would help solidify his minutes. I expect that you would see more Malik Beasley as well, based on their normal rotation with everyone healthy. Beasley basically gets his minutes from like whatever minutes he gets at the three behind, Hernan Gomez, and that Morris doesn't take. You're getting Beasley playing those minutes. So I think that you would get more minutes from him. He's not particularly productive on a permanent basis. So overall, I don't think Harris being out would change a ton other than making Morris a little bit more appealing and making Murray a little bit more appealing.
All right, moving on to the Thunder here. We know that Terrence Ferguson is going to be out for a couple more weeks. Alex Arenas was dealing with an illness, so Dennis Schroeder ended up playing. Arenas only played 7 minutes off the bench. The bench didn't really do a ton at all. We had Noel was at 11, Patterson was at 13 minutes, Ray Felton was at 5. I mean, everything went pretty heavy here with the starters. So to me, that seems that is probably where most of our intrigue is going to be. Looking at, let's start out with Adams. How are you feeling against him going into Jokic? Now, what we've seen a lot with Adams is he does an outstanding job defending against other centers, but oftentimes when that is happening, he is not necessarily looking for his own shot or getting a lot of opportunities outside of some rebounds and just general stuff in the paint there. How are you feeling about Adams in this particular matchup?
His price tag on DraftKings finally has come back down. He had remained priced up from when Westbrook was out and he was being more productive on a permanent basis. Now we're back down to 6,600, which obviously is more appealing. It's just still not a spot that I love because, for one, this isn't like Denver's been playing slow this season, and Adams still just isn't that high upside of a guy, especially when Westbrook's out there taking more rebounds, getting up more shots. We saw Adams' usage rate this season without Westbrook jump 2 or 3 percentage points. So it's just tougher to get excited about him at a mid-range price tag when Westbrook's in. So I'm not overly interested in Adams here. I really don't have a ton of interest in anyone outside of Westbrook or Jeremy Grant. Westbrook, for obvious reasons, he's basically the entire offense. He plays 36 or 37 minutes, does everything when he's on the floor. Jeremy Grant, just playing a ton of minutes right now, should probably get around 34 minutes here. If Abrinas is out, then you potentially get even more minutes. Like they're just running out of wings. You got a bunch of minutes from Deonte Burton last night as one of the wings, but it just helps solidify Jeremy Grant into that mid 30s range in minutes, and he's still cheap. He's not the most productive guy on a permanent basis, but he does enough stuff to be productive at a cheap price tag if he's going to get in the mid 30s in playing time.
Yeah, and he's been pretty solid throughout the rotation. The last 8 games, averaging just over 30 minutes per game, so that's a good sign for him. He doesn't necessarily live or die by the hustle helper stats. Most of his base comes from rebounds and points. Looks like he's getting just shy of a block per game, about half a steal per game in that stretch. So there's room for upside there because you never know when someone's going to luck into a 2-steal, 2-block game. There's nothing unheard of with that, particularly with the guy like Grant that can get those extra blocks. Even on the short slate, you're really not intrigued by George or Dennis Schroeder.
George is fine. I mean, his price tag's coming down as well, which is nice. He's just not someone that I plan on prioritizing whenever Westbrook's out there. The argument that I would make for George is that if you have a lineup where you're not playing Westbrook, then George is in tournaments, George is a great guy to get in there because it gives you access to this Oklahoma City team. And in games where George does a ton offensively, naturally you see Westbrook do a little bit less. So it just works as a leverage play. To kind of try and maximize your upside from a roster construction standpoint if you don't have Westbrook. But outside of that, I don't really like George that much as a standalone play.
All right. Are we ready to continue along to our battle of the Tom Thibodeau teams?
Yeah.
Looking at Chicago, looking at Minnesota. Minnesota is at home favored by 10.5. We have a 218 over under in this one. And I chose the wrong holiday last night, Adam. I played the younger Holiday. Aaron did okay for 3,300 on DraftKings. I played Drew Holiday, solid game, but it was Justin Holiday of all people that led the brothers. And actually, he had a phenomenal overall game, mostly on the strength of just dropping his 3-pointers. He is someone I rarely look to, but a couple people in our various chats have asked about him continuing along in any sort of usable fashion. Let's start with him. For me, he's a career sub 40% shooter. He does okay from 3-point range. If I'm remembering, he's like about a 35% shooter. I looked this up not that long ago because he's someone that just infuriates me to no end. But I don't really want to go to him this evening. At some point, the music's going to stop and we're not going to have a chair. What is your assessment of Justin Hall?
He is what he is. I mean, you're going to get a bunch of minutes out of him, especially if Chandler Hutchison's out. He potentially picks up a couple of more minutes. But I think that 36 to 38 minutes is a very reasonable projection for Holiday. He's not a high usage guy. Even last night where he was making a ton of shots, he only got up to about 21.5%. He just made 5 out of his 10 threes, 9 out of 16 total. Also grabbed 13 rebounds, like just a completely outlier game for him. When you play that many minutes, you can run into games like that. It's going to happen, but it's not something that you want to project, and it's not something that, especially if we project his ownership to be higher today, because the slate is smaller and because he's coming off this monster game and people like looking at game logs, you don't want to chase points like that because it was just such an outlier game in terms of his shooting and his rebounding. There's nothing to suggest really that, this is like a new Justin Holiday going forward. So it's what it's always been. If you need a cheap guy that's going to play a bunch of minutes and you can hope to run into some steals and some blocks and some peripheral stats, then sure, like Justin Holiday is going to be on the floor and that's appealing. But from an upside standpoint, it's still a play that is more likely than not going to kind of disappoint you.
All right, I'm just looking. That was a career best 13 rebounds. So props. There you go. We like some of the other players here. We've got, sorry, I've got too many windows open. Let me kill a couple of these because I see the computer going slow. All right, we've got, sticking with the Bulls here, we have an intriguing option from Zach LaVine. He's at 7,800. Oh, God, we have all the revenge in the world for this one. Former Timberwolves, so they've played several times, not to fear, but he is someone that is getting all of the offense. He is kind of the Devin Booker of the cold weather states. We have Jabari Parker, who's been doing well with Markkanen out and a variety of other people injured, so he's someone that could be interesting. We know that Wendell Carter has his moments, not great in a couple of his recent game logs, but we can expect that from the young big guys. From sometimes everything will go well and sometimes they will be completely lost. What else do you like here from the Bulls, starting with their primary scorer, Zach LaVine?
I always like LaVine, and this spot's no different. It's a good matchup against Minnesota, and he just has all the opportunity in the world. So, he's playing 37, 38 minutes a night. Since the Bulls moved Ryan Arcidiacono into the starting lineup and Jabari Parker, LaVine has a 31.2% usage rate, 21.2% assist percentage. Still not very efficient, which is obviously the issue. But when you're looking at a mid $7,000 price tag on DraftKings, it's just really easy for him to pay that off. He's not quite as appealing on FanDuel at 8,600 because at that point you need him to actually start making shots. But he just gives you such a high floor on DraftKings where he basically needs to average like a point per minute to give you an acceptable score. And some of these games, he's going to actually make shots. It's not going to happen very frequently because that's just not who Zach LaVine is. And he's not playing with a bunch of guys that are going to, take defensive attention away from him. But, even looking at last night, he took 27 shots. He's taken at least 20 shots in 3 consecutive games and like 8 of his last 9. So the opportunity clearly is there for him. And when he's still, inexpensive, still sub 8K on DraftKings, you can deal with it when he, underperforms or is disappointing and scores 40 fantasy points. So it's really difficult not to like LaVine on DraftKings. It's tougher to get there on FanDuel. I think Jabari Parker is a really good play on either site. He's less expensive on he's relatively less expensive on FanDuel than Levine is. The price tag's pretty appealing there at 6,800, still 5,900 I believe on DraftKings, and he has also benefited from playing with this group. He has 26% going into yesterday, a 26.1% usage rate since they made the starting lineup change. But he also is contributing more in peripherals as well. He leads the team in rebound opportunities over that span. He also has a 13% assist percentage, 17% assist percentage since that lineup change. So we're seeing Parker do a bit more in terms of peripherals to go along with his inefficient scoring. So I think that, he's a really good play here, especially you should see a few more minutes if Chandler Hutchison's out. I think if Hutchison's in, you can project about 34, 36 minutes from Parker. But in the 2 games without Hutchison, we've seen 40 and 39 minutes. So certainly something to keep an eye on there.
All right, let's talk about Wendell Carter Jr. for a second. With Saric, with Towns, with Gibson, with, good God, Gorgie Dang. Or is he still with them? I don't remember. But
yeah, he plays 10 minutes a night.
Point is, there's a ton of gigantic dudes over there on the Timberwolves. We're going to want, the Bulls are going to look to counter them. No Lopez for me, but Wendell Carter Jr., his last 2 games, he had 11 combined fouls. Fouled out last night against Miami, which is not great. The 5 games prior to that, he had 10 fouls. So ideally, he's relatively stayed out of foul trouble outside of 3 games. He fouled out back against the Knicks on the 5th. And then these last 2 games have been the only times he's really been in trouble. He's about a 20% usage player. That's not very exciting. But if he can stay on the floor, he can start to get the counting stats. He can get some rebounds. He can flirt with the double-double if things go his way. We know that Karl-Anthony Towns, not always the fiercest defender, also someone that doesn't always chase down every freaking rebound. So there is some potential opportunity here. Probably a secondary, maybe even a tertiary play, but it is a 7-game slate. What do you have here for Wendell Carter Jr.?
There's no way I see getting him on FanDuel at like 6,700. On DraftKings, the price tag is much more appealing at 5,400. The problem I have with Carter is it's really, really difficult to figure out how to project his minutes, because between him being in foul trouble recently and the Bulls being involved in so many blowouts, if you just look at his game logs and look at his minutes, you're not getting the full story, because he's just been losing minutes for one reason or another. The concern that I have is in the last game that Chicago played where Carter did not get in foul trouble and the game didn't blow out, it was against the Cavaliers like 7 or 8 games ago. And you still only got, I think it was 26 minutes from Carter. In the game against the Suns 2 games ago, Carter picked up 3 fouls in his second quarter stint. But if you like extrapolate out and let him play the rest of the first half, pretend he didn't pick up those fouls, he still was only going to play about 14 first half minutes. He was going to play about 15. So you would get like 30 minutes there. The problem has just been that Robin Lopez, for whatever reason, has been stealing minutes as the backup. And instead of it basically being Lopez picks up, or it seems at least that instead of it being Lopez picks up whatever minutes Carter doesn't play, it's like they're actively giving Lopez, 18 minutes a night or something along those lines, or that's the intention. So I'm just concerned about Carter's ability to play into the mid-30s, even if he doesn't foul. But for tournament purposes, if you want to project him for 28 to 30 minutes, then you end up getting a decent, $5,400 play on DraftKings. Just no way that I can get there on FanDuel.
All right, and then as we go through the last of the guards here, again, this is where our early value is, unless somebody's out with the flu or something else. So we've got guys like Shaq Harrison. He's kind of the guy I'm leaning to. This is particularly for me a DraftKings play, $3,600. We have Antonio Blakeney, who's down to $3,200. Who knows if he's going to have a good game or not? The minutes get to be a little wild between him and Ryan. Do you want to try, or do you want me to? Arcidiacono. There we go. I knew you would come through. I knew Laffy had gotten you back up to speed once again, shall we say. But those are the guys that I'm kind of looking at there. Any thoughts on them? And then I'm going to give you a little bit of a breather while we talk about some awesome old content.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any interest in the backup guys like Harrison and Blakeney just not playing enough minutes for me. Arcidiacono at 3,700. He's not a very productive guy on a permanent basis, but he is playing huge minutes. So he's going to be on the floor for, 32, somewhere between 32 and 40 minutes, most likely, depending on how he's playing. At that price tag, if you need a punt, you can certainly do worse than a guy that's going to play that many minutes. You just have to keep in mind that he's going to have, a usage rate between probably 8 and 12%. And he's not that involved as a passer. He doesn't really do anything. He just is on the floor a bunch. So, just, keep your expectations in check for him.
All right, a couple things I wanted to talk about. I see people asking, "Hey, what do we got here for projections? How often are Josh Engelman's projections updated?" They're probably updated between 7 and 10 times throughout the day. He does a fantastic job at doing that. You'll get a run in the morning, and then as various news breaks, he'll throw you an update in there. And they're probably updated within the last 90 minutes up until lock, probably another 5 times as things change and they happen. He's very good at that. Even when he's on air, he gets those updated quickly. Same thing for the FanDuel projections. Those are run by Andrew Barron, also known as Hot Magic. Those are probably updated just about as many times per day. We've got the Osmo ownership projections. So those are actually, behind the scenes, they've developed an algorithm with heavy influence here from both Alex Baker, Osmo, and then Tom. You also know him as TK. He is out there, is the number 7 ranked gamer in the world. And then Eddie 1800, he's in there as well. They've got the magic going on behind the scenes. These are scary accurate at times, and it's kind of interesting. Those generally are updated usually between 10 and 1 for the 1 p.m. for the first run. Assuming the games are going to be at 7 o'clock at night, and then they're updated throughout the day, and then they're done 2 or 3 times in that last hour, and you'll see them change and get closer as news breaks. Especially with basketball, they tend to they seemingly skew a little high on a few players early on, but then this takes into different accounts, projections, salaries, ownership, what other social media is saying about these players, etc. So there's all sorts of good stuff that goes in there. So those are updated quite frequently. We'll talk about how you can utilize those to your advantage here in a game or two, but we'll talk about how to look at some tournament strategies and how to use what is called leverage and when to fade chalk. Chalk means it's players very popular. Leverage means if the herd's going one way, how can you take maybe not quite as good of a play, but just a decent enough chance to overbalance them if their guy, I don't know, pulls a Trey Burke and duds. Something like that. So we'll talk about some of that stuff in a second. But I wanted to give you guys the promo codes again. So that's all paywall content. So that's behind the scenes. But you can use for 50% off 1 month. You can use the promo code CYBERMONTH at checkout. And then for those of you that are already subscribers and you want to extend, and if you're a new subscriber as well, you can utilize this. But it's CYBERYEAR is the code, all one word for those, and you get 12 months of content for a 10-month price. And then if you want to give us a tryout for the week, because those are going to run out on Monday, those are the Cyber Monday codes, so Monday at midnight, but you can use DFS strategy in honor of the DFS strategy show, all one word, and you can get 1 week free to give us a try. All right, Adam, moving over to the Timberwolves side of things here. We've got Karl Anthony Towns, been looking decent. Robert Covington, way up with his stock. Dario Saric, not so much. Of course, Saric is also dealing with the little Taj Gibson, Gorgie Dang, etc. It feels like he's getting a little crowded out there. What do you like here from the front court? We have Karl Anthony Towns is crested just a tick over 9,000 there on DraftKings, but this is a pretty good matchup for him, in my opinion. What are you looking at from the Timberwolves front court?
I mean, Towns has sucked for a few games in a row now, but it's not for lack of minutes, or it's not for lack of opportunity. He was in some foul trouble 3 games in a row, really, 5, 4, and 5 fouls. In the last 2 games, you only saw 28 minutes, but still getting plenty of opportunity, usage rates of 33.5% and 38% the last 2 games. We know that he is very productive on a permanent basis without Jimmy Butler on the floor. So really interested in going right back to Karl Anthony Towns here in a pretty decent spot against, just not very good Chicago team. So Towns, I really like. T gets 6K is fine. I don't have an issue there. Same for Wiggins. Like I think they both are pretty correctly priced. There's certainly the potential that they go off, but they're not guys that I feel as confident in at their price tags as I do with Towns.
Oops. All right. Back to swinging by 5,700. I'm still okay with that for Covington. I don't mind maybe a little Covington, a little Jabari Parker, get something on each side of this. Derrick Rose, going against his former squad. We've got Jeff Teague is back and in the mix. And we have Andrew Wiggins. I'm not an Andrew Wiggins fan. I have not been. I mean, congrats on being an NBA player, and dude, you are making millions and totally deserving of that. But not really excited for you for fantasy purposes. What do you got here on the backcourt side of things? Would you lean Teague? Would you lean Rose? Do you think the price, particularly on DraftKings, is getting up there a little bit for both of them, considering they're both playing heavy minutes?
Yeah, I mean, Teague, I think, is pretty accurately priced. I think projecting him for around 30 minutes is probably the way to go. Same for Derrick Rose. Should play around 30 minutes. I have no interest in paying more money for Derrick Rose than Jeff Teague. So yeah, not overly interested in either one. I think Teague and Wiggins are both fine. I will throw out Dario Saric as a tournament play. Like, he's not going to get any ownership. He's still cheap. He's playing around 28 minutes a night. He's not going to be, he's not necessarily going to be consistent, but if you're getting around 28 minutes against the Chicago team at sub 5K with no ownership, it certainly makes you an appealing tournament play.
All right, moving along here, we have our next contest. We've got three more. These are the 8:30 games. We have Boston and Dallas. Dallas, the first game that we're going to or first team that we're going to talk about that is not on a back-to-back. Boston, of course, was without Al Horford last night. We saw Aaron Baines have a nice game as a starter for him. On the Dallas side, we know that Dwight Powell is out. Let's see, I took some notes. He's been out with the knee injury or he is going to be out with this knee injury. And we know that Wesley Matthews has missed his last 3 games. He is questionable today with the hamstring injury. And then Dennis Smith Jr. has suffered a bit of a wrist sprain or a slight sprain on his wrist. It's on his right wrist. He only played 19 minutes last night, and generally he's someone that'll play 25 to 30 minutes, and he needs to get to 30 minutes for us to be excited for him. So for me, I think I'm just going to take, don't do this a lot, but I'm also in certain injury situations, I just don't want to deal with it. So I think I'll probably take him out of my player pool. There are enough other people that are there. One way I'll just take him out, but one way you can do this is limit his projections. I suspect his projections probably aren't going to make him pop anyway, just because he is the minutes have been pretty inconsistent with him. Looking at starting first with the home team with Dallas, if you got one go-to player for the Mavs, who is that going to be in tonight's matchup?
None of them. But if I had to go to one, I mean, DeAndre Jordan is interesting. Like, he's still 7,100. He should play around 36 minutes. Luka Doncic at 7,200 on DraftKings is perfectly fine as well. Obviously, a good Boston defense overall. It's not a matchup that I love, but Luka just does so much when he's on the floor that he's always appealing. And those really are the two guys that I'm always the most interested in from Dallas, but I don't plan on prioritizing either one.
All right. One thing I did want to call out here with regards to DeAndre Jordan. He had gone through a bit of a mini slump where it was just getting annoying. You're like, why are we playing this guy? He's priced up. We don't like it. Prices ticked down a little bit, and then he's getting the double doubles again. He's got double doubles in his last 3 games. He's got 12 and 14 against Brooklyn in 30 minutes, 38 minutes. It's a lot, but he was out there going against Marc Gasol in Memphis. He had a 17 and 20 game. That's pretty darn good. And then against Golden State, 30 minutes, he had a 13 and 10. So that's nice on DraftKings because you do get the double-double bonus here. But he is someone that I have not found on my rosters in the last few games. I think that may change tonight. There are some more robust sub-turbo slates or sub-slates. I don't know what to call them on each of the sites, but because there are 3 games at 8 and 3 games at 8:30, I've noticed there's a couple good ones out there. So that's where I would play DeAndre Jordan. I doubt he would make my lineup because I like a lot of these other centers, particularly on DraftKings here at the other prices. Looking at their current prices as opposed to him, it's price per dollar play. Looking at the other side here for Boston, Kyrie Irving has had some amazing games recently. Gordon Hayward, obviously no more minutes limit for him, which is nice to see, but we didn't get to see a ton of him last night because the Boston easily handled Atlanta, but he in 22 minutes did get 11 points, 5 boards, 4 assists, 2 blocks. So he had a pretty solid night in and of itself for his price point. But we saw him go 32 minutes against the Knicks, 31 against Charlotte, 26 against Utah, 39 against Toronto. So we can look to him. He's someone I would consider on this one just as a guy, a differentiation play going into my rosters. But with regards to assuming Horford plays, I'm not really interested in anybody other than Kyrie Irving. If Horford doesn't play, then I'm okay looking to whomever is starting. Do you think Horford will play or not, and how are you approaching his situation?
I'm assuming that he plays just because it kind of seems like a minor injury that they probably just didn't want him to play both games of the back-to-back. So until we get news, I'm going to assume that he plays. If he doesn't, it's not that difficult of a adjustment. You just give more minutes to Baines, you give more minutes to Daniel Tice, and then you throw some minutes to like Semi Ojeleye and Robert Williams to even everything out. I do think it's worth pointing out that last night we saw Marcus Morris start, and it doesn't really change his minutes projection whether he's starting or coming off the bench. Sure, you can give him a couple more minutes, but what really stands out is that when Marcus Morris plays with this bench unit, he's one of the highest usage guys out there. And you're looking at a 25 or 26% usage guy. When going back to last season, playing alongside Kyrie Irving and Jason Tatum without Horford on the floor, you have about a 19 to 20% usage rate for Marcus Morris. So it's another example of someone who his ownership goes up because he's named the starter, but he actually projects to score less fantasy points. So that's something to keep in mind. If he does end up in the starting lineup again, it's not as great a play as people are going to make it out to be. And Gordon Hayward coming off the bench, I think at a similar price point and similar minutes actually ends up being more appealing than Morris is at lower ownership. So that's something to keep in mind if Horford doesn't play. If he does play, Kyrie is really the only guy that I'm interested in here.
All right, let's move along to our next game here. San Antonio Spurs into Milwaukee. We've got the Bucks favored by 10, a 225 over under. Probably, I hate when I do that. It's highly unlikely that Pau Gasol plays. He should miss his 10th in a row with a sore foot. We know that John Henson is out with wrist surgery. They've said he'll probably be out until the All-Star break, it sounds like. And then we've got Dante DiVincenzo, who has been out the last 4 games with a quad injury. He is listed as questionable. That looks like all of the news here for this one. Rudy Gay, someone that's quite overlooked. He missed some time there with injury, Adam. He has been back. This is an intriguing spot for him. Let's start with him. We know we like some of the wing players against Milwaukee, and he is one that is not afraid to shoot from that area.
Yeah, Rudy Gay's really been going overlooked lately. His price tag has come up a bit. He's up to $5,900 on DraftKings now, so you're kind of looking at like a 10% price increase on him from 2 slates ago, and it makes it a lot more narrow play than it was. But I still think that he deserves more love than he gets, because when he plays with DeRozan and Aldridge, you still get a usage rate between 21 and 22%. You get some rebounds, you get a decent amount of everything, and he's playing 32 to 34 minutes most nights where he's not in foul trouble now. So it's still an appealing price tag for him. And for San Antonio in general, I think that their price tags are finally back to where I like them. DeRozan, I felt, was overpriced for basically the entire season. Now he's back to $8,000 on DraftKings, which is, very affordable for him, playing around 38 minutes a night. You have Aldridge coming off of a monster game finally, but his price tag's been falling essentially just because he hasn't been shooting well. He's been doing an excellent job rebounding. This is a perfectly fine matchup for him. So I like his price tag in the mid $7,000 range as well. All three of the, quote unquote big three from San Antonio, I think are in, pretty nice spots here in what is quietly a really up-tempo matchup as well.
Yeah, with regards to LaMarcus Aldridge, that's a guy who's just a massive, massive candidate for regression back to what his career numbers are. Coming into this season, he was just shy of a 50% shooter for his career. He has played, this is season number 13. Yeah, he's 33. Yeah, he's getting a little bit older, but it's not like he plays above the rim. And he's someone that has just always been a very steady, steady guy. I mean, he averages just shy of 20 points per game for his career. So we like to see, he approaches, 20 and 10s where we like to get, but he's almost a gimme on 18 and 8, especially on DK. If you can get that double-double, that's worth an extra point and a half. And those points, they actually make a difference. If you've ever gone in those large field tournaments and see if my guy would have just had one more 3-pointer, what would that have done for me? You'll see you move up hundreds of spots. Now, it doesn't always change the dollar amount of your winnings, but you can see everybody's packed very, very tightly, and you want to eke out every little bit of value that you can. And those extra bonuses are one of the things that oftentimes gets overlooked by gamers. On the season, he's averaging 18 and 11. That's pretty solid. He's amongst the league leaders there in rebound. So I like him. On the rest of the guys here, I don't think for the Spurs I'm really going to look to anybody else. Patty Mills sitting at 3,500 on DK catches your eye a little bit. We know he can get to around 20 fantasy points. At 3,500, that's pretty damn exciting. I'm interested in that. I like that. Let's go with the vet. Obviously not a ton of distributors there. And what the hell happened to the Derek White experiment? I had picked him up in some season-long leagues. I jettisoned him a while back. He's just fallen off the shelf, Adam. So here I am looking at Patty Mills and actually getting, dare I say, excited at 3,500?
Yeah, the Derek White situation's been, surprising. He was, in the preseason, that injury was a pretty big deal. He was someone that was expected to have a big role here. He, came in when he came back from his injury, he was playing 30 minutes when he rejoined the lineup. But yeah, he's pretty quickly fallen out of favor here. So I'm not sure that I expect that to be the case the rest of the season. But, as of right now, Mills is back to getting, mid-20s in playing time.
Yeah, I think that's pretty darn solid. Moving to the other side here, Giannis is going to be, of course, one of the premier options in this game. This is, we always, for him, where he's prized with what he does, we need the games to stay close so he can stay on the floor. He's been one of the guys this season that has had some of his successes curbed, particularly recently for games that we would deem, blowouts. That's going to happen from time to time when you're playing Chicago and when you're playing some of these, other crappy teams in the East. But if you look at Giannis, where would you rank him amongst our top options tonight on DraftKings?
I always love Giannis. It's not a spot that I really love relative to everyone else, though. Like, San Antonio has really struggled in transition defense this year, which bodes well for Giannis because, obviously he's just an absolute beast in transition. He's really difficult to stop anyway. And this team has really struggled there, but it's not a fast-paced team. They don't turn the ball over a lot. So I have a little bit of trouble getting excited for him at a more expensive price tag than, Westbrook and Durant, at a similar price tag to Anthony Davis or James Harden. So I don't plan on getting to Giannis today if I'm not max entering. Playing single entry and 3 max, I would rather play Anthony Davis. I'd rather play Durant. But it's not an issue with Giannis so much as it is that I love the spots for those guys. And I just dislike the spot with San Antonio a little bit more.
All right. A couple other guys here. Middleton and, of course, Eric Bledsoe. Those are two guys that can get 40 fantasy points in any given game. They're both very solid. The last couple years, I've always kind of leaned a little bit more towards Middleton. This year, I've completely flipped that switch, and for me, Bledsoe is my default guy. I particularly like him where we can get him at the shooting guard. That tends to be a little bit more helpful, but he's someone that I like to look to even on the draft app. Oftentimes he's overlooked there, and you're getting him with your third or fourth pick in some of these larger slates, which is just crazy because when you get the 3 points for steals, that's something that helps him out a ton. Picking between those two guys, who do you like? Is there anybody below them that you would even consider in this for the Bucks?
Yeah, I have Middleton and Bledsoe projected pretty similarly. Middleton slightly higher. His minutes have been down a bit lately, and that's not great. Like I think that projecting Middleton for 34 minutes is probably better than the 36 or 37 that we used to give him, but still cheap enough that he can be productive here. Bledsoe, I just have projected a little behind him because we haven't seen as much usage or facilitating from Bledsoe this season. And the price tag's still, relatively expensive. As far as the cheaper guys, Brogdon plays about 30 minutes, but they're not overly productive minutes. Brook Lopez certainly has a ceiling, but he's priced up to where when he was 44 or 4,500, even his floor would give you, pretty decent games, and his ceiling would just blow his price away. Now his floor, obviously can disappoint you at that price tag. So more of a secondary option for me, but, certainly can come through in the spot.
Alrighty. We have one more game. Our second team that did not play last night, that is the Sacramento Kings, are heading into the Oracle Arena to take on the Golden State Warriors. We do know that Curry is out again for sure this game, probably another 2. We don't know what's going to go on with Draymond. I think he's a 50-50. I didn't think he was going to play the last one. This one, I think he might if he's able to be healthy. It looks like, surprisingly, that I would have thought Clay and Kevin Durant would be enough to keep Golden State going, but there was a fun little interview moment by Steve Kerr that said, we're now in the real NBA. We've been living a dream for the better part of the last 4 years where everything went our way. We're now having to deal with some adversity. And I think at some point, I think this was the stat, they'd lost 3 games in a row, or maybe it was 4 games in a row for the first time since 2012 or something crazy like that. Adam, let's start off with Golden State. What do you think? What are your thoughts on Draymond? Is he in or out? And then how do you want to approach this either way?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you that it's probably like 50-50. If he's out, then again, Durant just is a phenomenal play. He hasn't been great lately, but he also hasn't been shooting well. He was 2 for 22 from 3 going into yesterday's game. He shot 2 for 5 yesterday. But you're still getting 38 minutes from a guy that projects for a 36.5% usage rate, close to a 30% assist percentage in a pace up spot against Sacramento. And there's just no reason not to expect Durant to have, better games going forward than he has in the past. So I would go right back to really, really liking Durant here, especially if Green's out, because it gives him more ball handling responsibilities. But one play that I think really would stand out if Draymond's out is Quinn Cook at only 4,900 on DraftKings. Played about 30 minutes last night, and he's back in the starting lineup now, playing alongside Iguodala, but he gets more ball handling responsibilities without Draymond. It would be better if the starting lineup didn't also have Andre Iguodala in it, but still, if you're going to get 30 to 33 minutes from Quinn Cook at a sub 5K price tag against the Sacramento team, I think that he comes in as a pretty interesting value play that people don't really seem to be paying attention to anymore. Then Klay Thompson, obviously a really, really good spot for him, continues to have his minutes staggered with Durant. So he's getting a percentage, about 20 to 25% of his minutes without Durant on the floor, which going back to last season gives you, close to a 33% usage rate. For Klay, he's at around 26% when he plays with Durant without Draymond or Curry. So it averages out to around a 29.5% usage rate for Klay in, an up-tempo game against the Sacramento defense that isn't great. It's certainly a spot where Klay could be the one that, takes over this offense.
I do like that call out there for Cook. That is one I'm going to earmark for my short list as well. Looking at the Kings here, they have been feisty as hell, I think is the best way to describe it. They are in, they may actually have a winning season. Now, we have a lot of basketball to go, but if you are a Kings fan, you are feeling pretty good about sitting at 10-8. Now, that's going to be a bubble team, and they'll probably falter a bit because, they are the Kings, but that's pretty exciting. And considering my team is an absolute dumpster fire in what we usually see the Kings, I have now adopted the Kings as my co-team that I am rooting for, my West Coast hammer here. Let's see what comes. Let's see what transpires. But De'Aaron Fox, always on my short list. He is one of the fastest guys in the league. He is just operating with impunity right now. If you pick the right spot for Willie Cauley-Stein, it works out for you. Buddy Hield can be intriguing. We like him when his price is going down a little bit. That's the case there on DraftKings. Bogdan Bogdanovic is back, and he's got some stuff going on here. Or pardon me, he is not he's back from injury, so he's now in the mix. And then Marvin Bagley getting some more, not just blowout run, Adam, Talk to me here about the Kings. I like them. I don't know how many people are going to go to them this evening, and I also like the fact that they got a little bit fresher legs than some of these other teams playing tonight.
I think they're really appealing. DraftKings price tags are still low on them. I'm pulling up FanDuel now just to see if it's the same. I know for the last week or so, FanDuel's had them priced a lot more appropriately, and that's the case here as well. So more interested in the Kings on DraftKings than on FanDuel. But on DraftKings, you have De'Aaron Fox at $7K. You have a cheap Willie Cauley-Stein. You have basically the entire team underpriced. And there are a lot of different guys that you can go to on this team. Starting with De'Aaron Fox, who, you mentioned, but he's playing like 36 minutes a night in competitive games, has a 24% usage rate and over a 30% assist percentage this season, averaging over a fantasy point per minute. And I mean, that's even if you just take his averages there, that gives you a productive score, for his price tag. So I think De'Aaron Fox is a good play. Willie Cauley-Stein in competitive games where he's not in foul trouble is getting around 34 to 36 minutes as well. He's averaging well over a fantasy point per minute too, and is inexpensive. So I think both of those guys are really appealing, especially if Draymond's not in. You just run into a less effective front court for Cauley-Stein to go against at only 5,900 on DraftKings. Buddy Hield has a ceiling. The issue with him is that his minutes are a little bit more subject to change. Like we'd seen for a lot of the season, him playing 34 to 36 minutes, but you have Bogdan Bogdanović now playing, he played 30 minutes against Utah in their last game. And so there's more risk in rostering Hield. Like I think there will still be some games where he plays 35 minutes, but there's going to be games where he plays 30. So a little bit more risk, but certainly upside for him if his shot's falling. And then the value guys, Bogdanović, who I just mentioned, 30 minutes last game, still priced at $4K on DraftKings. He's, I believe, 4,900 on FanDuel. He does a pretty good job when he's on the floor of just doing everything. He can score some, he passes well, picks up a reasonable amount of assists. And if we're going to see him start playing 30 minutes a night, then he's just underpriced. Bagley, the second overall pick this year, basically Dave Yeager has an ultimatum to play Bagley more or get fired. And so far he's been finding ways to get Bagley on the floor. Some games he's been the backup center to Cauley-Stein with Harry Giles not really in the rotation. Other games we've seen him just directly take minutes from Bjelica. But regardless, we've seen him basically locked into 26 to 28 minutes at 4,500. I think that's a pretty reasonable price tag. I do prefer Bogdanović at a cheaper price tag, but either one's in play. I think the Kings are just a really underpriced team on DraftKings in particular.
All right, let's talk now that we've gone through the games here, since this is the DFS strategy show. Let's talk a little bit of strategy, Adam. So I'm going to mention some stuff here about ownership projections. So I'm looking at, and you're going to laugh, and this is going to be fun, but the Fred Van Elite fan club, because hey, I was the only one that played Fred Van Vliet last night. He actually had a good game, and I got second in the contest. Now, let's talk about this. Leverage is something that you're going to hear a lot. So what leverage means is if you've got 60% of the field, which is something we can see particularly in basketball, if you've got 60% of the field on a player and they crap out and you don't have that player, and whoever your pivot was, which means the other player you went to, it could either be at the same position or the same dollar amount, etc. It doesn't even have to be that. You could move into a 2v2 or something like that for basketball. But if your person craps out, or the person that you're doing the quote fade for craps out, you can have leverage against the rest of the field. So this is a 20-person contest. We run it. This is I think the 20th time we've run it. I have to play Fred Van Vliet in this contest. That's the only stipulation they have. So this is the second or third time I've cashed thus far. Has not been a good season, Adam. But I was the only one with Fred Van Vliet last night, and he actually was relatively solid with 29 points against the Washington Wizards. 60% of the league had Trey Burke. Trey Burke had 11 points. So all of a sudden I'm about 20 points ahead of 60% of the league if you look at that as the quote direct pivot. Now, I don't think of it that way because I had to have Van Vliet in here. So my guy that I chose, I said I'm not going to take Burke. I also said I'm not going to play Vonleh. The Vonleh one didn't work out quite as well, but we'll get to that in a second. But I said I'm not going to play Trey Burke. I'm going to go with Aaron Holiday. So I went with Aaron Holiday, who was significantly cheaper than Burke, used that money to be one of the handful of people to get Anthony Davis because that was a differentiation play that I wanted. So that worked out in my favor because Holiday was only on four of the 20 teams. He had 22 points, doubled Burke. So that was kind of my direct thing there. That put me up for most of the day. A lot of the people, 40%, had Noah Vonleh. Noah Vonleh had 45 fantasy points. My pivot away from Vonleh is I went with Aaron Baines. Now, a lot of you are going to say, well, good. Aaron Baines, well, of course, he was starting. He was obvious. Everybody played him. Not in this league. I was the only one out of 20, so that's 5%. He had 35 fantasy points, so that was not as far away from the Noah Vonleh 45 fantasy points. It was about 10 points, but I used that money elsewhere. So a couple of the things, and then I want to hear what you have to say because you play some more single entry stuff and you really study these tournaments and such. What do you look to for leverage? And that's something we've been using the Osmo. You and I have really gotten into it, using the Osmo ownership projections because we know who the 2 or 3 most popular plays are going to be. Yeah, we get that. That's pretty easy to identify. But some of these secondary guys that you don't realize are going to be 30% owned, 28% owned, 42% owned, etc. They're kind of the 7 through 15 most popular plays. We lose them in the wash, but by being able to identifying those guys and saying, do you want them, do you not want them, and then moving from there. How have you utilized that to your advantage this year?
I think the big thing is just paying attention to what players at a similar price point project similarly. Like what ends up happening, especially now that people are better at NBA DFS and there's more access to good projection models across the industry, you get really heavily concentrated ownership on guys that are projected to be the best, but only by a couple of like a fraction of a point or something like that. And like an example the other night was Tyreek Evans and Jeremy Lamb at the same price point. I had them projected. I think I had Evans projected for like 34.5 points and Lamb for like 34. And the ownership difference ended up being like Evans was 43% owned and Lamb was 3 or 5 or something like that. And so you really just want to pay attention to spots like that because you can just differentiate your entire lineup by pivoting, one guy to where, for all intents and purposes, those guys are exactly the same, projection wise. There's enough variance where we're not going to accurately project, half point differences enough that we should be going with the field there. And it really just comes down to, it's really difficult mentally sometimes to get yourself to do it because it feels good to be right and it feels good to cash a tournament. But if you're just going with the field in those spots, you don't really get anything for being right. Like, you can feel good and you can brag that you played this guy, but everyone else played him too. What really feels good is when you differentiate, and the nights that it works out, you win a lot more money than the nights where you don't. So it's just giving you, more upside to make money. You're not going to cash as frequently because you're taking a stand against the field, but you're going to win more money when you do cash, and long term you come out winning more money that way. So it's just looking for spots where the field is all concentrated on one guy, and there are similarly projected guys that are going to go underowned. You don't want to force it, and like using the Knicks last night as an example. I think I made a mistake in not playing Vonleh in my single entry because I thought he was a really good play. I just didn't want him at 60% ownership. But realistically, if he was going to play 34 or 36 minutes like he had been, there wasn't anyone around him that projected really that closely to him for me. So it kind of felt like forcing it. I probably should have differentiated elsewhere. But yeah, it's just, when you get guys where there's a lot of guys that project similarly, just paying attention to that and taking the lower owned one gives you a much higher expectation in the long run.
Yeah, and then live before lock show, Fast Eddie kind of called this out. He said, "Look, with Burke and Vonleh, you're going to see Twitter be so binary on these outcomes, regardless of what the outcomes are, because they were so popular. So you're either going to see the people that faded them, meaning they didn't play them, and the player crapped out, like Burke, saying, oh, haha, you guys were idiots. There's no way Trey Burke could have kept this up, even though he's kept it up for 4 games straight. There's no way he could have kept this up. And then if there were people that, that faded Vonleh and he had a good game, oh my God, I can't believe Vonleh's sinking all these 3-pointers again. This is so you lucked out. Chalk lucked out. It was a bad play, and he should have done poorly. It's like, the groupthink and the mindset is just so heavy in basketball. Unlike any other sport for DFS, you need to utilize that to your advantage. And the ownership projections are definitely one way to do it. Having the conversations with the people in the Slack chat, bending the ear of Adam and Josh and those guys saying, "Hey, I'm trying to do this. What would you do?" Or, "Hey, are you?" I'll send them a message. "Hey, Adam, I'm doing 30% on X player. What do you have?" Or I'll ask him first because I want to see what he's going to do and see where I am on that. So it's kind of fun just to see what we're doing as we're getting into this multi-entry thing. Now Adam's kind of changed back to his bread and butter is looking at stuff, creating 1 to 3 lineup variations, and going for the single entry or 3 max stuff. But there are many ways to win in DFS. And there are even more ways to lose. And basketball is one of the toughest things you can do. So everybody's got to get that next level. And that's now more into just game theory and making sure your plays are optimized. And if you've got 3 guys on one team, you probably better have 1 guy on the other team, unless the 3 guys on this team are super cheap. Because if these guys are going to have a good game and it's not going to be a blowout, then it should be somebody from the other team having a good game, etc. So you got to make all these little things work in your favor. And that's one of the great things that you get to see here from Osmo. The lineup builder here is pretty cool as well. You can build your lineups. You build them by hand, but you select the players you want, and it gives you a score. And it gives you like a GPA type score, and it tells you what your score is for value and what your score is for differentiation. So you want to be a little bit different, but you don't want to cost you or what your projected score is going to be, but you don't want to be such a low differentiation that you're going to have the same plays as everybody else, because you're not going to make any money when you are successful. I mean, Adam said it best. You want to be right. You want to feel right. My guy got 40 points. Well, hey, you guys know, I think one of the people that had Vonleh cashed in this tournament. The other thing I want to talk about is tournament size. So this was a 20-man. Well, it was a 20-man. I got second, so that means technically, what did I have? I should have done the math at home. It was a 5% lineup, but I got 4x my money. Okay, yeah, low dollars, but this is all, we're talking percentages. That same score over in the $1 big giant field tournament got 2.5 times. In the mini max, I did not double my money with that score. And then in the single entry $2, I got 3.5 times. And then in the $5, I would have gotten 5.5 times. So you need to understand these different payouts and these different structures, because I wouldn't have thought, well, the mini-max, shouldn't that have been about the same as the $1 and the others? No, it's not, because the mini-max 150 entries, the $1 20 entries, etc. So you need to look at these different payouts, and you need to look and see how you play and how different people play. If I would have played a bunch of leagues, I probably would have gotten a couple firsts and a bunch of seconds in these leagues, because this was a good percentage finish lineup, and it would have been more lucrative than what it was. Thoughts, Adam, as we get on out of here?
Yeah, smaller. I mean, obviously, smaller field tournaments are easier to win because there's less people. But it's a really good way if you're, especially with cash games getting harder, if you're just trying to supplement your bankroll, like mixing in, just smaller field, single entry, and 3 max stuff is a good way to do it, as long as you're actually paying attention to the lineups that you put in those and playing lineups that suit those leagues. But one other thing I wanted to touch on, as far as what we talked about ownership wise, is obviously we were talking about tournaments there, but with cash games, if you're playing 50-50s, you still want to pay attention to ownership. You just want to look at it the other way. Like if you have an example I had with a friend yesterday who had DM'd me talking about his 50-50 lineup. If you had JJ Redick projected for 1 point more than Marcus Morris yesterday, I think that was perfectly reasonable, and it would make me love JJ Redick in tournaments because he's a pivot off of Morris at the same price. But in cash games, Morris is going to be significantly higher owned in those 50-50s. There's no reason to take a stand that big in that type of contest where you have guys projected for basically the same, and you should just be looking to go with the field in that situation. So again, with ownership, just keep in mind what you're playing and what your goals are for that contest and the best way to win it.
Yep. So a couple reminders, couple good deals here. Cyber Year gets you a full year of Osmo premium content, all the bells and whistles for a 10-month cost. That is, as I like to say, 12 months of play for 10 months of pay. You can also get, if you want to try us out and give us a little more of an extended run because you're on the fence here, you can use promo code CyberMonth and you can get 1 month at half cost. I saw a couple people mentioning in chat, oh, it's too expensive. I don't want the $60. Look, it's $1 a day. If you do the 1 month deal, jump in at $1 a day, try it out. You'll get to see the ownership percentages. I see a couple of people asking about that as well. That is again the thing that I, when I was working for other FanBuys, we didn't have ownership projections, and I wasn't subscribing to Osimo. That's probably the most valuable thing that I have seen over here is the ownership projections. The other thing I really like about ours, because I've seen there's 2 or 3 other sites that do them. They do an okay job. And here's why I say they just do an okay job. They go more for levels. They get the popular guys right. They don't differentiate after about the first 6 or 7 guys, which gets to be a little frustrating. They make everybody 10% or everybody 5%. That's not how it happens in the real world. So I like to see ours because it's differentiated by percentage points. I mean, hey, let's read off a couple now. This will be updated probably 3 or 4 times today, but we have Rodney Hood at 27%. He's the highest owned player today on DraftKings, probably because we're accounting and we don't know what's going to happen for Anthony Davis at this point. So we have him at 15%. Bogdan Bogdanovic, 22%. That's an intriguing one. Adam, if you had to choose, would you go with Willie Cauley-Stein as 19% ownership or Marvin Bagley at 19% ownership? These are the decisions you get to start to make. We get all the way down here on some of these where we say, oh yeah, these are lesser played guys. But if you knew you could get Drew Holiday at 6%, would you play him today, Adam?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's right. You factor that stuff in. You look at your projections and then you adjust for how you have ownership projected. And hours obviously change throughout the day, but when you look at the last update, at like 6 or 6:30, a half hour before lock, it comes out pretty good, and it gives you a really good idea of how you should be making your lineups here.
Yeah, and again, that's one of the things. The other thing you want to know is, if someone is the Drew Holiday, if he's just 5% owned, and I thought I wanted him on half by lineups, maybe I rethink that a little bit. If I'm making 20 or more lineups, maybe I say, you know what, I could, if he's really going to be 5%, I could bump that down to 20% instead of half. If he busts, I'm still alive with whoever my other alternative players were, but I'm still 4 times what the field is on it. Now, I think the Drew Holiday number is going to go up throughout the day, so that's going to change. But for the initial look right now, that's where it's at. But of course, if Anthony Davis is out, yada yada yada, we'll see him up there a little bit higher, depending on what position chalk comes out at. If we find out, Gary Harris is not going to play, and it's all the Monte Morris in the world, and things like that, that's going to start driving things. Well, as that news comes out, we'll update the percentages here. And it's really something to behold. And this is something, the last viable thought that Adam and I talk about a lot. Now, we don't always do this because Adam and I, we're a pair of knuckleheads. But play the same amount each day. Play the same contest styles each day. You do a little bit better off. When I come in on play $1,200 to this weekend on NFL, and then I lose $800 of it, and then the next weekend I'm like, I'm only going to play $400 this week, and then I double my money, I've still lost. If I would have just paid the same amount, though, I would be up. This is one of the things you lose sight of. Adam, I'll let you finish up here and we can get on out of here.
No, I mean, I agree with you. It's bankroll management has always been my weakest issue in DFS. And that's one of the things that I think makes a big difference for me when I actually stick to it is, playing the same stuff so that when you win, X percentage one night, you're not, it's not like a fraction of what you lost the night before. So yeah, smaller contests, smaller fields, and not trying to guess which slates you're going to win on, I think is a, just solid approach.
All right. With that, gamers, we are going to get on out of here. Adam is going to be writing the deep dive. That is our article that will come out later this afternoon. That will be breaking down in depth what we have discussed. He will hone in on a player pool at each position of the different price ranges at each position and get us the goodness with some stuff backing it up. These are invaluable things to read, and you can file away a lot of tidbits for when these players play the same teams again or end up in similar type situations or against similar defenses and have an idea of how things are going to work. So I think that one's very, very valuable. In my opinion, best article in the industry for NBA, and I've said that for 2 years. I said Adam and Lofty are the guys that I would pay to read no matter what.
That's my opinion also.
Well, I would hope that would be your opinion, because otherwise we'd have some words. We could say, youngster, you got to get that nose to the grindstone. But you put in a lot of effort on that. And so does Laffy, and I know you guys. I know all the work that goes in behind it. So definitely something you guys want to check out. With that, gamers, we are going to get on out of here. So good luck.